we have training camp that started this week for all of us. Titans, Cowboys. Cowboys started last week. But we ain't really worried about the Cowboys.
They need the
Yeah,
extra
you know
work,
what I'm
man.
saying? Yeah, they need the extra work. Skin started this week. Uh, and Colts, they started this week too. So, with that being said, both of you all made some competitive moves. And some of the best offseason moves on paper. To be considered AFC title contenders. We can go macro with this, Zach and Sal. Just talk about the Colts and Titans. And Sal, I'll start this one off with you first. We can talk about the macro level on the more significant moves this offseason that helped propel the Titans and Zach the Colts to becoming conference title contenders.
Yeah, I think our GM John Robinson did an outstanding job from top to bottom. I think the nucleus of this offseason obviously would be Julio Jones. Earlier on, some of the things that he was doing didn't make a whole lot of sense because when you lose guys like Corey Davis and Johnny Smith and you don't really replenish your offense, when you go mostly defense in the draft, it became very confusing, like what we were going to do. And then once we signed Julio Jones, it kind of all made sense. I love the signing of Bud Dupree, of course. I think his upside is tremendous. If you watch him during his time at Pittsburgh, every year essentially he got better and better and better. And before his injury last year, he was on pace for basically damn near Pro Bowl year. So I'm very excited about that. Danico Autry, I think, was a very underrated signing for our defensive line. Obviously, Colt fans are familiar with him. He had an outstanding career there. And like I said, Julio Jones, I mean, he's been my favorite non-Titan for the last 10 years. And anyone who follows me on Twitter will know that all I do is rant and rave about what an outstanding receiver he is, how he always, he's so dialed in to his profession. You don't see him doing anything crazy. He always has his nose down and he grinds. So to have that guy on my team is, sometimes I got to pinch myself still. So
Me
That's how I
too.
felt when
I ain't
Adrian
gonna,
Peterson
I
got
ain't
signed
gonna,
to the
I,
Skins,
I
man.
ain't gonna lie to you, man.
It's always those
that,
one player that person that you always looked up to or that you always loved, and he's on your favorite team now.
Yeah, I mean that week one game when he comes out, it's gonna be
Oh my
surreal,
god.
and I might shed a tear or two. So
Me
I'm gonna
too,
have the
dog.
tissues
Me
ready.
too, dog. I'll be right there with you.
Yeah.
I'll be right there with you.
So if you had to give it to one person, outside of Julio, obviously, because you did name a few signings, and obviously you guys went in the draft as well. If you had to give one person that you'll say is the second biggest piece to help this team out, who would that person be for the Titans?
Um. Well, I mean, if you're talking about who is most important for the progression of the team, I think you could have an argument that it could be either Bud Dupree or Caleb Farley, who was our first round draft pick. I mean, last year our defense was comically awful. They were just, no pressure. Our corners just got picked apart left and right. So
Mm.
he was the piece that we're hoping to build around in that secondary, as well as some other guys in the later rounds like Molden and there's another guy who's slipping my mind. But and Janoris Jenkins we picked up as well. But I think, like I said, I think it's probably a tie between Bud Dupree and Caleb Farley because both of them are expected to revamp their aspects of the defense. Bud Dupree with our pass rush and Caleb Farley with our secondary. Both guys have question marks as of this moment for week one. We don't know what we're going to get, but we can hope for the best. But, I think you can make arguments for either of those two.
So, with all the additions you just named, because you kind of beat me to the punch because I was just listening to all the additions that you said that we had acquired. But when you cut the TV on, you watch certain shows. People, tend to not really still consider us a team to go to the Super Bowl because of how bad our defense was last year. So I'm asking, like, do you think that we've made enough moves, on the defensive side of the ball to put us in that position to whereas you think we can win the Super Bowl this year?
I really do. I really do. And another thing I've been preaching on Twitter for God weeks now, this team, this defense, realistically, they have to be average. They don't have to be fantastic. They don't have to be
Right,
elite. They don't
right.
even have to be top 10. If they can be somewhere above the top 15 mark, then I don't understand how anyone beats this team. I just don't, because there's too many weapons offensively. Numbers are numbers. There's not enough guys on the field to cover Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, and Derrick Henry. I mean, those three guys, it's a pick your poison. It's a cliche term, but it's the realistic term. I mean, how is anyone stopping that? So as long as our defense can get off the field on those dreaded 3rd and 20s, and Ryan, I'm sure you remember how every time there'd be a 3rd and 15 plus, like, you know what? Why even watch? It's going to be a first down.
Not to cut you off. I'm sorry. I really have to.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would be literally watching the game, and my brother would watch the game with me. Right, he's a Skins fan though, but certain times he watched the game with me, and it'd be 3rd and 15. I say, watch this. They're going to complete this 3rd and 15, and sure enough, they will do it consistently. And I wasn't even surprised at some points of the season. I just really had to sit back and close my mouth because I was going to break stuff.
Yeah, and it went further than that. I mean, we've seen 3rd and 20s, 3rd and 24s completed.
Terrible.
Things that are almost you would
terrible.
think are mathematically impossible would happen. So if this team can just be average defensively, I think you'd be crazy not to mention them in the same breath as the Chiefs, as the Ravens, and all the other powerhouses in the NFL. I mean, I'm very, very happy with where we are, and now all the pieces need to be put into place, and they need to perform, and hopefully they do.
All right, Zach, where you at, boss? First and foremost, my bad. Faye, appreciate you checking in, man. I did see you from the Discord. I appreciate you. I hope you enjoying the show, all that good stuff. Joining the conversation, we're talking AFC South, Titans and Colts. We got the guy Zach who's about to break down on a macro level, the Colts all season and how it could have, or if it propelled them to AFC title contention. So I'm gonna let Zach tell the story.
Yeah, I think the Colts are kind of on a different aspect of team building than the Titans are right now. The Titans kind of put all their chips in. They're going for that Super Bowl. I think the Colts are kind of still in that phase before your window opens up. They just made that big trade for Carson Wentz, trading a 3rd rounder and a conditional 2nd for a guy who was the worst quarterback in football last year. You really can't argue that. Like, he was downright awful last year. But we have seen great play in the past. You guys obviously know as Washington fans that we have seen great moments and great play from Wentz before. And I remember that game, I think it was the opening week of 2018 or 2017, where he made that crazy play to Aguilar. Yeah, 2017. So, he does have the ability to get, to where he was. It's just going to be a wait and see kind of with the Colts. And that's kind of the big emphasis on this whole team with the Colts. Eric Fisher was brought in, but we don't know where he's going to be after this Achilles injury. So he's presumably going to be the starter at left tackle, but he's going to miss the first couple weeks, first couple months of the season. When you look at their draft picks, they brought in Kwity Paye, who's arguably the best pass rusher in this class, or most upside of a pass rusher in this class. But he is kind of a raw player who didn't really produce a ton at Michigan. So it is kind of wait and see for him to develop and kind of go young at the edge rusher position. They had Danico Autry, they had Justin Houston the last couple of years, but they really weren't the guys. They didn't have the youth, they didn't have the bend or the explosion to really be what you need in today's NFL. So they decided to go young. They got Kwity Paye, Dio Adeyembo, who's coming off an Achilles injury as well. So it's kind of a lot of just wait and see where these young guys are developing and see where they're going. They do have a core in place. They locked up their right tackle, Braden Smith, today. They have a quarterback that they think that can be their long-term guy. But again, I do just think that they're kind of in a different place than the Titans. They have great coaches, great team, but you really just got to see what you have at these core positions.
So, you brought up an interesting point, like from your perspective, a person who deals with the Indianapolis Colts on a daily basis, right? A step below in terms of progression, team progression, a step below the Titans. Now, I do have a question about Carson, right? Prior to when you guys got Phillip Rivers, I needed, like, what was the expectation heading into that season? I mean, obviously things change, roster turnover, all that good stuff. But heading into that season, where were you all at in terms of expectations? And because I'm trying to see, like, what was a significant drop off, because obviously you do have Carson Wentz, who is there's an assumption, and it's probably 99.9% true that he was the worst quarterback last year. So I'm trying to see where the drop off lies. Zach, what was the expectations last year when y'all had Phillip and versus where y'all at now?
Yeah, it's actually crazy. Under Frank Reich, every quarterback that's kind of worked under him has gotten markedly better from their prior year that they played. Andrew Luck going into 2018 went from probably his worst year of his career back in 2016 to when he played 2018 under Reich. I mean, he was arguably a top 5 quarterback in the league that year. 2019, Jacoby Brissett was at least a passable starting quarterback for the whole season. They were actually in the playoff hunt until the last couple weeks of the year. And then Phillip Rivers goes from this broken old man quarterback that nobody thinks can have success in the NFL. Some people were saying was the worst signing in the entire league, and by almost every single metric, I mean, he was a top 11, top 12 quarterback in the league for most of last season. So the expectations definitely change with Frank Reich, and guys are able to bounce back. For me personally, I saw Phillip Rivers as a guy who wasn't broken. Going into last year, I did think that he could put them in position to win some games, which he ended up doing. He was never going to be a guy who's going to put you over the top, but he did make them competitive last season, which was great. When it comes to Carson Wentz, I don't know if he's going to get to that peak play that we saw from Rivers last year, because Rivers is just so smart and so accurate. I think he's on a different level, maybe even all time when it comes to how smart he was. I mean, there's that famous J.J. Watt story he told this year where J.J. Watt said that the Texans were bringing a blitz, and Rivers pointed out one guy who wasn't lined up correctly on their particular blitz that was coming. And Watt was like, yeah, he was supposed to be blitzing, but he was lined up the wrong way. So Rivers knew what blitz they were calling just by the design of their defense. So I don't know if Wentz is going to be able to make that complete jump that Rivers did from one of the worst quarterbacks in the league up to, top 10, top 11, top 12. But, I do expect kind of a regression back, or a positive regression back to more of a middling play quarterback this year. I think he's going to be pretty inconsistent because that's kind of how he's always been. But I think we'll see more positive plays from him rather than all the negatives ones that we saw last year with a better supporting cast, better offense around him, and a better play caller in Frank Reich. So yeah, I don't know if he's going to make that huge jump that Rivers did, but I do think he will prove to the rest of the league and kind of prove to himself that he's not completely broken, which is what he looked last year.
Nice. Nick, before I move on, do you got anything for Carson Wentz in the Colts?
I got a question too.
He kind of just he actually asked what I was going to ask. What I thought he was going to say. So, all right, go ahead.
What you got, Ryan?
So I mean, I'm hearing all things you're saying about Carson Wentz, and what has me thinking is, what is his weapons when he's going out to Indianapolis? I'm sitting there looking at his wide receiving core, Michael Pittman, T.Y. Hilton. But outside of that, I'm not really too sure who else you all have acquired that, but will really help Carson Wentz in that regard. I'm honestly asking. I don't know who else you all have acquired.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, it's mostly the same group that they had last year, which again was pretty efficient with Phillip Rivers. The number one thing obviously that I want to say before I jump into it is Frank Reich's always been great at scheming guys open, whether it's Zach Pascal, who's had over 600 yards each of the last 2 seasons and played some good football. Ryan Grant came over here and had 400 yards.
I like Pascal.
Yeah, Pascal's a solid player. He's from a 757 down there, I think. But yeah, they have some. It's a lot of. I want to say it's kind of mostly mediocre guys around them, but that's such a big improvement from what Wentz had for most of last year that you can't really complain. You have T.Y. Hilton, who's not what he was, but he's still a very good underneath and intermediate guy. Pittman Jr., who was one of the best run after catch guys last year. Almost all of his yards came after the catch. I think his average depth of target was like 3 last year. Paris Campbell,
because he's a big guy.
Yeah, it's crazy. It was really weird considering his college film too. Paris Campbell, who we're kind of just hoping can stay healthy for the first time. The tight end group is very dependable. You have Mual Cox and you have Jack Doyle, very good blockers, good pass catchers. But it's going to be really big in the running game. Jonathan Taylor, third leading rusher in the league last year. Nyheim Hines, which is my guy, great pass catcher, a great backup running back. And then Marlon Mack, who was a 1,000-yard rusher in 2019, as their third back. So, I think it's going to be a heavy run game, heavy play action that you can kind of work off of that. Then a lot of dependable guys who are out there catching the ball. And I think, just that combination is so much better than what Wentz had last year with so many rookies and everyone backup was a backup player on his offensive line. I just think that it is such a big improvement, even if you're not talking, we're not even near the Titans level with skill players. The Titans are a different level, but it is a very solid group with a good offensive play caller.
Absolutely.
My guy's Zach.
I actually do have a question.
My guy's Zach.
Zach, who's the backup in Indy right now? Because with Carson, you probably need a solid backup. You're not going.
It's a fair question. It's a fair question.
No, it is. It is for sure. Carson hasn't stayed healthy his whole career. We have Jacob Eason, who's a 4th-round pick out of Washington, former 5-star recruit. Potential-wise, I think it's interesting that they have him. We have no clue what he will be if he gets thrown into real NFL action. And then also Sam Ehlinger, who they drafted in the 6th round. I love how tough he is. I love how accurate he is under 10 yards. Once you get past the 10-yard mark, I don't know if he has like an NFL arm to really be in the NFL. But again, tough guy. I think he can do some things if he had to play. But it really comes down to Jacob Eason and where he's at with his development.